Hey, good day. Mike Mata here. We are going to talk about using your Wireshark in the security side of the house. As a security analyst, being able to look for attack signatures and how to build some strategic filters to help you out on that side of the house. So we're going to talk about the hacking process and how do we follow it using our Wireshark. First off, we have to think like the bad guys, and they're looking at how do they evaluate your target. You are the target. What is the vulnerability? Is there a vulnerability? And then can they exploit that vulnerability via, buffer overflow attacks, SNMP? Do you have weak community strings, things like that? So you have to think about what is the hack value of your information and your targets to the bad actor. So the first phase technically used is reconnaissance. Think about case in the joint. You have to think like the enemy. What do they have to do? They have to footprint the network. That enables them to create a profile of your organization. And probably the easiest is using the network reconnaissance. That's probably the most important part of any attack. The goal is to identify any active hosts that may be listening on the targeted network. It is during this information gathering phase that the attacker maps the network topology by identifying network devices, open ports, network services, and operating systems. The more complete the information gathered about that targeted network and its hosts, the higher the chance of achieving a successful attack. So the simplest is right there, the first one, domain name, DNS Reconnaissance. Domain name services, or DNS, is used to translate a domain name to an IP address. That's the basic function of DNS. An organization's publicly accessible domain name server typically stores its own DNS records, and it can also provide a variety of other information. DNS information is publicly available, and it can be queried using built-in operating system command line tools like NSLOOKUP or dig or host. And that information then is extremely very useful to an attacker, since reconnaissance, DNS reconnaissance, can easily obtain a list of all the known host IP addresses from the targeted network. So the simplest form is a DNS Zone transfer request and response. Those requests occur over TCP/IP port 53. Think about normal DNS that we use in our everyday life is using UDP port 53. Zone transfers are over TCP. So the DNS zone transfer is the replication process that provides a copy of the DNS zone file resource records from the primary DNS server to a secondary DNS server or multiple secondary DNS servers. So the DNS zone transfer request responses should be restricted to known secondary DNS servers only. Otherwise, the entire copy of the DNS zone file can be requested. I'm going to show you some Wireshark filters that we can use to retrieve any DNS zone transfer. So let's just take a look here. Some of the other things that we want to do as part of case in the joint is footprint the network. Social media gives us some easy access. Phishing, Google hacks, remote access. Is there any remote access? So we're going to take a look at this in Wireshark. Let's jump into Wireshark. Here we've got a trace some DNS. We're just gonna take a look and see if there was a DNS transfer. So one of the simplest ways is we can build a filter looking for DNS zone transfer request. That would be, we talked about TCP port 53. DNS zone transfer request there. We've got the TCP port 53. and the DNS flags response equals 0, and the DNS query type equals 00FC. Again, if we want to look at this in the actual Wireshark decode, so again, we talked about TCP port here. The destination port is 53. It's always TCP to do the zone transfer. The DNS flags, again, it's a response. So if we look at the flags, 0 there. The second part of our complex filter is it's a query. The query flags response equals a 0. And this is the response. Standard query. And then last, DNS query.type is down here. The query.transfer type. DNS query.type right there is AXFR, or if we look over in the hex window, 00FC in hex. And so we can actually see the packet that it's sending a DNS query for a zone transfer. Now the big question is, did we get a reply? So let's clear that filter, and I'm just going to go into some of my security filters. Now you notice I have a profile called security here, and if you don't know how to create new profiles in Wireshark, see one of my other videos. But I've got a bunch of filters already created from the security side, so we're just going to go ahead and use one of those. DNS Zone Transfer Response, I've got that built, so there's no reason to type all that in. And here we go. We can see that there was, again, its TCP source port is now 53 instead of the destination. The flags response is 1, so it is a response. And the query type, again, is a zone transfer FC. And in this case, we get server failure. It didn't allow that zone transfer. And that's a good thing. That's what we're hoping that we would see in our trace if someone tried to do a zone transfer to our DNS server. So some of the other DNS filters that you might want to have in your arsenal, I'm going to give you a list of those here in just a second. Again, this is just one very simple way that you can use your Wireshark as a security tool to look for someone trying to do some DNS reconnaissance against you, trying to get a zone transfer request made and see if you reply. Very simple 2 filters there. I've got some other ones here that I'll show you that I use. Just some Wireshark DNS filters. There's our zone transfer request, our zone transfer response. If you want all of your DNS queries, you want to see all the queries and responses, that's pretty simple. Just type in DNS. The DNS queries, again, the flags response equals 0. The DNS response, the flag response equals 1. Query and query type. So you can see those 2 filters right there. Let's just clear this out here. And again, if we use that DNS, just type in DNS, we can see all of the queries and responses. So here we see some refused. I've even built coloring rules, and I will do another video on how to build coloring rules based on different filters. So again, we can see the different queries and the different responses. So I hope that was beneficial. Stay tuned for some future additional security filters using Wireshark. Thanks. Make it a great day.